Hey everybody, it's Dr. Tim Harrigan. I have Bree on our call here. We're going to go over some of the Vibrant tests with you guys that we've been using for a while. In fact, Bree and I have been meaning to do these for a long time now. We've been using them in our practice quite often with patients, and so they're kind of complex, and that's why we use them, in fact, because most of the traditional methods for gathering information about our bodies, they're honestly just outdated. They're incomplete. For example, when somebody goes to get their thyroid check, Bree, most of the time people bring in blood work that's like maybe 2 or 3 items about the thyroid. That's just not enough information. That's enough information technically to prescribe something to that person. It's not enough information for somebody to address the cause of fixing whatever that thing around the thyroid is causing, though. It's a complex process. So these tests are kind of overwhelming to some people, but there's technically nothing simple about the human body, right? We tell our patients every day that there's every second in our bodies are incredible. I mean, every second our brain is controlling 30,000 billion chemical reactions. Every second that happens, 30,000 billion, 30,000 billion. So when you understand that, you kind of realize how stupid we are actually, right? When we think we understand what's going on in the human body, we don't have a clue. Our brains can't even comprehend what happens in 1 second in our human bodies. So one of the things that we've gotten good at with helping people is, testing, not guessing, because similar to a headache, a thyroid issue, a low back issue, a heart issue, there's hundreds of contributing factors to that symptom. Or hundreds of different causes for that one symptom. So if somebody gets a headache, I don't know if it's because they're dehydrated, or if it's because of a hormonal issue, or it's because of tight muscle in their neck, or it's because of a micronutrient deficiency, or because of this and that. It could be a brain tumor, right? But it'd be silly for us to assume that every person that comes in with a headache has a brain tumor. Well, that doesn't make sense. But the point is, there's hundreds of reasons that contribute to this thing that I call a headache. So without testing, we're treating symptoms. And that's not what I want to do with my health. That's not what I want to do with my family's health. We want to test, not guess, but the body's complex at the same time. So going for a yearly physical, we actually have a video on this. That's one of my pet peeves. I'm not saying don't go for a yearly physical, but when you go in once a year and have 20 to 30 things tested in your body, in your blood, most of those tests are designed for prescriptions, unfortunately. They're not designed to address the cause of a problem. So you go in, I get the 30 blood measurements, my cholesterol, my blood sugar, all those really basic things. They listen to my lungs, my hearts. And then, the doctor sends me home and says, you're healthy, come back next year. So we're just sitting around waiting for things to happen. I'm waiting for my heart attack to finally occur, or I'm waiting for, the big C word diagnosis, or I'm waiting for my headaches to be there for years to finally do something. So what I've done with myself, and what we try to teach patients, it works incredibly well. I haven't had a prescription in my life in over 25 years. So you guys help me with this, but I actually get a lot of labs done on myself through different labs, mostly Vibrant. Every quarter, every 3 to 4 months, I literally measure hundreds of things in my body, not because I'm sick, not because I have certain symptoms, but because I would have no clue what my Epstein-Barr numbers are, right, until I get really sick if I don't monitor those at least occasionally. So if I can measure thousands of different things in my body today, what is 30 things once a year going to tell me about myself? Virtually nothing. So what we're doing is waiting for symptoms to occur, which at that point, again, the headache has hundreds of causes. The thyroid issue has hundreds of environmental causes, stress, adrenal fatigue, all those types of things. So your testing that we use is incredible, and it's comprehensive. So we're going to go over a bunch of the different tests here, little chunks, just a few minutes each, to kind of guide you guys to see, why would we use this test? What is getting tested? Who would we use this test on? For what reasons we might use it? And then some of the traditional methods that somebody else might use instead. But I love you guys because it's so comprehensive. It's kind of a user-friendly approach. You guys print out incredible reports based on what the tests are. You're not just simply saying what's high and low all the time. It's more information about my body so I can actually learn and address that stuff in a proactive manner versus, again, waiting for things to get really bad. Then we start doing investigative tests. Maybe after I get diagnosed with lupus or whatever it is, we want to be proactive and not just wait for those things to develop. So let's get into some of these tests now. Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Tim Harrigan and Bree, and we want to talk to you today about some toxins. This is a strange conversation because most people, a lot of us are blind to the toxins we're putting on our body with our lotions and our foods and our water, tap water. They are everywhere. They're in the air now. So it's a matter of conversation of not if you're going to be exposed to these chemicals, it's how many are you going to be exposed to and actually store, because some of them will get stored forever if we don't do the right thing. So toxins are important. Toxins play a role in every disease. You know, the big C word is the #2 killer in the United States. This needs to put us all on kind of high alert, because we're going to show you a case study here in a little bit where you can absolutely affect these chemicals. But how are you going to affect them if I don't know what areas of the body they are, or how many I have, or the severity of my problem? I can't see it. So it's one of those things, out of sight, out of mind. You don't want to have that attitude. These things will store and cause complications with your mitochondria, your brain, and all that other stuff. So we have some really cool tests to help us get some baselines for people. Let me go over those maybe real quick so people can get the names down, and then we'll repeat that a few times. So the first one we're going to go over is PFAS. This is a buzzword lately on TikTok and all these different avenues. People are talking about it because the research is profound. We're all getting this. This is from Teflon, cooking products, our air fryers. This is everywhere, you guys. So we're going to go over PFAS chemicals, some environmental toxins that we're exposed to and what we can test for, some mycotoxin or mold conversations, and then what we call a total tox burden, which is a lot of these tests combined. And then we're going to get into some more information on how, what, why, and when these chemicals. One of the stats we're going to go over is there's 83,000 chemicals in our food supply and our personal care products that the FDA has allowed as safe to be added to our things we're ingesting and putting on us. So they've really only tested about 200 of those items out of 83,000 to a high level of testing. So 83,000, we know really well about 200 of those. So technically, we really don't know what we're doing. We're just being chemical filled all the time. And it's not a surprise why that big C word is absolutely getting worse every year, every decade. So the first one, let's go over the PFAS chemical test. This is the forever chemicals. We'll keep saying that 100 times because that is exactly what they are. And they're in your clothes, Brie. Where do we get these things? Why do we have to be concerned about this?
So it's a polyfluorinated chemical. So it's a part of a coating. So it coats products that are resistant to different elements like heat, oil, stains, grease, and water. So when you think about it, all of these modern conveniences we have today, like we have things that are resistant to stains. So your sofa, doesn't get stains on it, or you have, your nonstick pans, that things don't stick to. Well, anything that is resistant to something like that usually has a polyfluorinated chemical structure to it. So they changed the molecular structure of it so that it is able to resist these different elements. And so what happens is we consume those, and it can cause a number of symptoms in people. So these are just some of the harms here that your patients can see, but everything from allergies to changing the timing of puberty and imbalances of sex and thyroid hormones that we talked about already, increased diabetes risk, change to your metabolic system, so your weight, growth, things like that, increased risk of kidney disease. There have been some links to cardiac events, cancer, skin irritations, obviously, things like that, changes in even DNA methylation, an increase in cell toxicity and cell mortality, which is going to, put you at an increased risk for many diseases and increase of aging as well. So they definitely can have a lot of ill effects on us.
Well, and the key word here is they bioaccumulate,
Yes.
and at a cellular level. So everything in my body, I don't care if we're talking about my pancreas, my brain, my inner ear, and I have vertigo, or my left toe, my adrenal glands, everything is cellular. So that's why this list is insane, because it affects the cells, which can be anything. So again, we we try to teach our patients, Bree, that we don't use these tests to treat something. We never do that. That would be ridiculous. Because if you give me 10 different people with lupus, for example, they all have different micronutrient deficiencies. They all have different toxicities. That's what we're talking about here. We have to address them differently. All we're doing is helping somebody get healthier, but you can see how far reaching these chemicals are, and they're everywhere. So thank you for sharing that. So that's PFAS testing. We can add that to what we call a total tox burden, which is a really comprehensive test, but we're going to kind of separate this for now. Let's get into the environmental tests that we can do, Bree.
Yes. Absolutely. This is our environmental toxins information here. And Vibrant has a pretty extensive list of environmental toxins that we do look at. We measure 39 environmental toxins on this panel. It is a urine panel, so again, very easy to collect with one urine sample. And you'll just see here, again, like we just keep seeing the wide range of effects of these toxins that build up over time. So, everything here from chronic fatigue, dizziness, anxiety, hearing loss, headaches, mood swings, irregular heart rate, visual changes, unusual skin sensations or tingling or numbness, abdominal pain. So it can affect the gut. Absolutely. Static shocks. I mean, all of these different types of symptoms, environmental toxins can certainly be a component of, for sure.
So literally everything again, this is a test that everybody needs to do this. Again, we can't fix this stuff if we don't know about it. And it virtually affects everything you could ever possibly deal with. So can you just show us real quick, maybe some of the tests and some of the weird names that we're going to be looking at?
Absolutely. So this is the list of the 39 toxins that we're looking at here. And I think a lot of people, including myself, actually may be thinking, well, I don't work around a lot of toxins. I work in an office, or, I'm not exposed to chemicals daily. That was my train of thought before I tested myself. And then I realized, if you're living and breathing on this planet, you absolutely are getting exposed to these toxins every single day. They are everywhere. You can't avoid them.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, as they look at this list, a lot of words are going to pop out to them. One of the scariest ones that I've ever studied was atrazine.
Absolutely.
Atrazine is, I don't know how this ever got onto this earth, but it changes male frogs into female frogs, literally. Yes. A live frog, not the next generation. It converts this living frog to a female frog in real time. It's insane. So we need to test for these, you guys. Environmental toxins, they're coming from everything, our lotions and everything else. So we have PFAS, the forever chemicals. We have the environmental toxins. And next I want to get into the mycotoxins or molds. Maybe some people might... that might be a keyword, but this could be, where would we get these? Why would I be concerned about testing for this?
Absolutely. These mycotoxins can come, often most people think of moldy buildings, and absolutely that is a source. Your bathroom, anywhere could easily get mold. But what a lot of times we don't think about is there's a number of foods that are very highly concentrated with mycotoxins, coffee being one of the biggest sources of mycotoxins. So, you can get mycotoxins from any number of sources. And again, these can affect people very differently. Some people might not have as severe of symptoms, but other people, depending upon their genetics or how their body is able to detox these mycotoxins, can have many symptoms, of which you see a lot of those listed here. A lot of the exact same symptoms we listed for environmental toxins, everything here, even down to the static shocks. What we do know also is that mycotoxins, just like environmental toxins, can be very disruptive to the endocrine system, very disruptive to your hormones, to your metabolic system, even, to your cells as well. So it can affect so many things.
Well, and again, it's a cellular level type thing. So if somebody's listening to this and they have diabetes, or they just have migraines, or they have joint pain, doesn't matter what you're dealing with. This is stuff that we have to test for. We cannot base anything on symptoms. We have a whole 5-minute video on just that topic, where we have to test symptoms guide us? Never. If you could have no symptoms and tomorrow I have that heart attack, or tomorrow I get diagnosed with stage 4 big C word, right? So symptoms have nothing to do with the cause, how to fix something, even if you're healthy or not. So you have to test this stuff. So you mentioned coffee. I think a lot of people, that's kind of a mainstream conversation now. They're coming out with these cleaner coffees. They're trying to, at least. But peanuts is a big one. I know a lot of bodybuilders and, people that are trying to get extra protein from peanuts and peanut butter. It is the worst. It has aflatoxin, which is one of the worst ones. Corn, everything is corn byproducts, right? GMO corn and all this. It is a mess out there. So what are some of the things that we're going to be finding maybe in our body with this test?
Yes, absolutely. I'll show you the list of markers here. So as you mentioned, aflatoxin is that is a really bad one. But yeah, we do measure all the different strains of aflatoxin, ochratoxin. So again, some of these are found more in moldy buildings, others are found predominantly in foods, but we can break that down for the patient and for Dr. Tim, so that way we know where the mold is coming from, hopefully. But we can at least isolate, is it food or is it from a moldy building, and then work to see if we can start to detox that from the patient.
Absolutely. So we've covered PFAS chemicals, we've covered environmental toxins, we just covered mycotoxins or mold toxins. So do you have something on heavy metals just briefly? I think that one's pretty familiar to most people.
Yeah.
This is another test that's included in one of our bundles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you mentioned again, cancer being, that dreaded C word, that a lot of the toxins and can definitely be a driving force too. But heavy metals, definitely, many of them have correlations to cancer risk. And so along with a lot of these other things, everything from neurologic to respiratory, cardiovascular, dermatological, reproductive. That's a big one that we haven't really mentioned yet, but the number of people these days that are struggling with infertility, oftentimes those people can be helped at least by looking at this toxic load and starting to help them detox these things out, so that again the hormones work effectively. And then some of the metals that we're actually looking at, we do look at 20 different heavy metals, and a lot of these are, very commonly occurring all around us. So in the air, the water, soil, really just everywhere. You don't have to work around heavy metals or like in a factory to be exposed to these things. They really are everywhere.
Right. And so I only really like to do heavy metals tests now in combination with other tests, because most people understand this conversation. Most people have been tested for this over the past 20 years. There's becoming more and more buzz about this. Honestly, the mycotoxins, the mold in food, the PFAS chemicals, I don't think people realize those are the ones I want to test now. More importantly, I'm going to add these to that test. So that's the cool test that you guys have called the total tox burden. Yes. That's going to be the environmental test that we went over, the mycotoxins that we went over, and then these heavy metals. But rarely, this is a lot of practitioners do this, I realize. Still, they're just checking heavy metals. That's like literally 1/4 now of what my concern is with people, because the PFASs are harder to get rid of. They're everywhere now in our air fryers and pans. So I won't isolate these tests anymore. We have to look at all of them, because you can see how far reaching they all affect our body. If I test one without the others, I'm not going to help you very well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I will stress the ease of testing for all of these. So even if you wanted to do the total tox burden and the PFA forever chemicals, we could test you for all of those with one single urine sample. Super easy.
Awesome. Yeah. So we have a test that combines the environmental toxins, the mycotoxins, and the heavy metals. That's the total tox burden. We went over the PFAS initially, but we can also combine those three plus the PFAS as well. So thank you. Let's get into some of the other conversation about some of these chemicals. I want people to realize now where they're getting them, because it's pretty mind-boggling. It's everywhere. It's literally my chapstick. It's everything. So we're going to get into some of that chemical exposure. Awesome. So now let's go over maybe some real-time testing and retesting, because without a baseline, I do lots of good things for my health. I'm eating certain foods that help detoxify my body, but without a baseline, I just don't know the severity and I can't get real specific with it. So this is a patient you mentioned where you guys did a test and then a retest after doing some therapies. So can you explain kind of some of these tests? And I think there's about 70 something tests that you guys did.
Yeah, total tox burden looks at, I believe, 79 different toxins in the urine. This is just a small group of those. But, oftentimes we hear from people, they'll say, well, why test for something if there's nothing that can be done? And so we have to educate people and providers that absolutely there are things that can be done to try to remove these substances from the body. A lot of them are, more natural means with different supplements and things like that. I'm sure you have a lot of those, Dr. Tim, but, what's, I think, very inspiring actually about these tests is the fact when we can see people get better and we can look at how they're feeling symptomatically and see those symptoms improve along with the numbers on these reports. And this is actually an actual patient that went to his doctor. This patient was a male. He was 39 years old also. So I just want to stress that, this is a young individual that was previously very active, and over the course of a couple of years became so ill and so fatigued that he had to quit work. So this was affecting his life in a very big way. So he went to the doctor, had our total tox burden urine test ran, and was put on a protocol by his doctor to try and start to remove these things from the body. And within a period of about 7 to 8 weeks, the patient was feeling so much better that he requested a follow-up lab to see the numbers. And I will say this isn't always the typical outcome that we get. Some people obviously take a much longer period of time to see these numbers change, but it was so substantial, the change that he had, that we like to share it with people, just to give you, some hope that, if you're not feeling well and toxins are part of the picture for you, there are things that can be done. But yeah, you can see things like glyphosate here and some of these 3-methyl hypuric acid and these parabens. Parabens are in, like you mentioned, Dr. Tim, so many of our cosmetics, your chapstick, the lotions that we put on our body. And many of these levels were highly elevated in the red for him. And then within, about a month and a half later, he was retested. And even if the levels were still high, they were brought down about half of the value. And he brought down several of these values that were highly elevated to moderate levels. So it was pretty astonishing to see that level of change for this patient.
Absolutely. And instead of just scaring people, right? I don't mind scaring people if it's facts, not to scare them, but to wake them up. Because would I prefer that and actually make this uncomfortable conversation going over my initial test with somebody that I have parabens? That's a scary word if they understand what those are. The BPAs, people know those are banned in plastics now. Those are scary words. I want to see that. I want to get scared now with a test like this, to make some massive action in my environment, eat a certain way, do the detox methods that we teach, because this is when I want to get scared. I don't want to get scared after my heart attack, after I get diagnosed with the C word, right? Let's get that wake up call before that maybe life-changing or death sentence you're going to get. Okay. And let's try to wake you up before that happens. That's what this test is designed for. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's inconvenient. Yeah, I have to make some changes probably. That's the whole point. I want to do it now when I have control of it, not when it's out of control. So I think that's such a super important thing for people to see this before and after, so that we can actually get them to actually do something now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
We can make a lot of change. Thank you so much, Dr. Tim.
All right. So why do we care about toxins? Well, toxins are absolutely everywhere, as you can see in this chart here. They're in the air, they're in our water, they're in our foods, they're in our personal care products. So there's really 3 things that we need to constantly do on this topic. One is detoxify what's in your body. We've already been storing these chemicals and toxins and cancer causing, hormone disrupting chemicals for since we were developing in our mother, actually. So we want to detoxify what's in our body, and without testing we don't know exactly what that will entail. Okay, so getting rid of what's stored, that's number one. Then building up my resiliency is number two. I want to make sure that my liver is functioning good. I'm eating whole foods constantly to bind to other heavy metals, other toxins that I'm getting exposed to through my normal day-to-day activities. And then three, we want to avoid toxins when we can. So changing our food, changing some of our personal care products and those types of things. So a good website to start this journey, which I've been on this journey for over 20 years, it doesn't end. Products are constantly changing in the market. Chemicals are changing. It's a never-ending process, and it gets really simple once you delve into it. But there's a good website called ewg.org. They have an app on your phone. You can actually go around to maybe a grocery store and scan the type of lotion you put on your skin or shampoos, and it will tell you, it'll rate that product as terrible through really good, based on the chemical content of that shampoo or whatever you're looking at. So ewg.org. So let's get into this. Again, toxins are everywhere. Actually, there's about 84,000 chemicals that have been allowed to be added to our environments, essentially. And they've really only tested about 200 of those extensively. So 84,000 are out there, but they've really only tested to see what 200 of them are actually doing in the human body. So it's a mess. And we wonder why heart disease is the number one killer. Cancer is the number two killer. It's insane. So where do we get these? Well, first of all, again, while you're developing, we get these from mom to begin with. So they actually found 287 industrial chemicals, including pesticides, phthalates, dioxins, flame retardants, Teflon, and other heavy metals in newborn umbilical cords. This is insane. So before we even get started, we already have 287 showing up in the umbilical cord, let alone what's stored in that baby's body. So this is an article. I can't see that picture there, the top, but you guys can see that hopefully. The environmental health news. So kids glyphosate. This is basically a pesticide that they spray on virtually every grain you've ever heard of. Okay. So there's not really any safe grains anymore. I can send you some research on that, but we don't eat grains at all. Kids glyphosate exposure linked to liver disease, metabolic syndrome. Read that article about glyphosate. It's a chemical poisoning thing. It's actually not even the gluten, but you want to avoid gluten containing foods simply because they have a lot of chemicals in them now. So when you put something on our skin, it's actually absorbed into your bloodstream in 26 seconds. So if we're handling grocery store receipts, which have BPA in them, shampoos, all these things are getting absorbed almost immediately. And this is the average female, right? They're putting all kinds of stuff on their skin, hair, nails. It's a chemical storm, you guys. Why are we surprised that cancer is the number two killer, right? We're literally poisoning our bodies unknowingly. So I blame the industries for this, but man, it's everywhere. So parabens, that's a scary word to some people, as it should be. It's just one of the tiny chemicals that were absorbed through our personal care products and otherwise. 99% of breast cancer tissue contained this chemical, parabens. So we ingest them, right? All these processed foods we're eating, trans fats, high fructose corn syrups. There's so many chemicals added to our food supply. It's really not food anymore. It's not an apple, right? It's all this other stuff in this packaged process thing with all these ingredients now on the label, most of which are chemicals. They're in our spices. So toxic contaminants are found in 32% of spices that are tested. So most people consider spices as pretty healthy, but go to Green Med Info and you'll see that there's toxins in our health foods even. So about 1/3 of spices had heavy metals in them. These are some of the common ones that they tested. Spices are actually responsible for 19% of children with lead poisoning. Our air has never been dirtier. Air pollution is at an all-time high. This is a crazy one. The World Health Organization estimates 4.6 million people die each year from causes directly attributable to air pollution. This is insane too. In 1989, the EPA, and it's much worse now, estimated in 1 year, 5 billion pounds of chemicals, 5 billion, you guys, were either dumped into public sewage or released into the ground, surface waters, or air. So that's why a lot of healthy foods actually contain chemicals, because they're in the ground, they're in the water, they're in everything around us. So the US allows over 14,000 chemical additives to be safely added to our food supply. This is insane. Tap water, we're actually getting anticonvulsants, anti-inflammatories, other prescription drugs by drinking tap water. A lot of people say, well, I don't drink tap water. It's like, well, where are you getting your water then? Do you not go out to restaurants and drink the water they give you there? The water at different stores and places that we go, it's tap water. It eventually came from the tap probably somewhere. So we use a very sophisticated water filtration system. It's not your traditional one, but it's the cheapest, best one we've ever found. So reach out to us if you want questions, if you have questions about that. But every single person who has cancer, this is research that was run, Nobel Prize research, has a pH that is too acidic. So when we're ingesting all these chemicals, we're making our body more acidic, more prone to every disease you can ever think of. And again, there's 80,000 chemicals registered that are allowed in our environment to be safe, and they affect our immune system, our nervous system, our endocrine system, how people reproduce. It's never been harder in history for somebody to get pregnant because of these chemicals. But mainly, our main focus on these is because of your brain. Your brain controls everything, you guys. The heavy metals kill our brain, the artificial sweeteners, the low sugar, low fat products that people are buying, thinking they're making some good health decisions. MSG is actually neurotoxin. These are all the things that make our cooked and processed packaged foods taste better, but they're chemicals literally poisoning our body. So we want to identify those and detoxify them because it affects everything in your body. I don't care what you're dealing with, if you have aches, pains, or you're just going for prevention or optimization, or if you have sleep issues or gut issues, it doesn't matter. All diseases are a reflection of a few things. The root causes are always 100% of the time. These diseases don't happen without this, either immune imbalances, structural imbalances, hormonal imbalances, inflammatory processes in our body, toxic chemical exposure, digestive imbalances, and mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells. That's how our cells function and actually have energy, is through the mitochondria. All of these chemicals that we can test for literally poison our cells, which affects every other process. So we need to stop treating diseases. We teach our patients there's really three things that can happen. You're either toxic in certain things, that's what these tests are for, deficient in certain things. This could be enzymes, minerals, macros, proteins, good fats, things like that, or an imbalance. That's all we can look at in somebody's body and address that, right? We don't treat diabetes. We don't treat even low back pain. We have to treat the cause of a problem, which is always this stuff that most people, they just want to treat their symptoms or just treat my diabetes. You can't. It's impossible to treat those things effectively. There's a lot of treatments out there, don't get me wrong. They never reverse the condition. They never get us more healthy. They're basically management systems for those things. So again, three things: detoxify the body from what's stored in my body for the past, few decades. Then we want to build a resiliency in our body, which means my liver's functioning good. Your liver has over 700 jobs. One of those is detoxify your body, affect your pH, your acidity levels. So resiliency, and then also avoid. So use that website, ewg.org, to start that journey and finding out what are we doing today with our toothpaste, our personal care products, our foods, snacks, things like that are actually adding to this toxic load that's literally killing us over time. So reach out if you have any questions. Hope you enjoyed that.